pleasure state to me, it's kind of like a state of being and like in kind of that like love, right? Like again, Tantra is a heart-to-heart transmission. So we don't do Tantra, we like live Tantra. You know, it's not something we do. It's essentially, it becomes a way of living. The same as this like pleasure state. It's kind of like this frequency of love almost. And I feel like, I don't know, a lot of people that I work with, like including myself, of how I used to relate to how do I like being loved, and like how do I give love? It's very conditioned from a childhood perspective. I feel like we all feel like we need to do certain things to receive love, or this is what love looks like.
Welcome to Just Between Us. And just between us today, we have Tugce Balik, who is a Tantra practitioner and a sexologist. So welcome. We're so happy to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, first off, what the fuck is a sexologist? And first let's start with sexologist.
Great.
What the hell is a sexologist?
So sexologist, basically, it's a branch of psychology, and it looks at the psychology of sex. Essentially, the people that I work with are people that might have issues around sex, men and women and couples. A sexologist is basically someone that you might go to work through some blocks or issues that you might have in your sex or in your marriage as a couple, or as an individual if you have any blocks around your sexuality, around a specific part of your genitals. So it's just someone helping you through any sexual issues or dysfunctions that you might have.
Okay. And then then you're also a Tantra practitioner.
Correct.
And what's that?
So Tantra is a huge umbrella term that we use, and I think it's been thrown around a lot lately, but Tantra is essentially like a spiritual science, I guess, and there's different forms and types of Tantra and different lineages of Tantra. The teachings that I have are from Tibetan Buddhism, and it's essentially me combining like what we know of Western science and research on female pleasure, because I mostly work with women, and combining with Taoist methods. So Tantra is basically a form of yoga, and you have sexual and non-sexual practices. So we use those practices that we know from the Taoist, let's say Taoist practices, to combine so that you have more of a holistic healing when it comes to your sexual empowerment, your sexual blocks, and your sexual journey as a whole.
Oh, okay, so you basically use both in the work that you do. Because I've had an interest in Tantra just because, I mean, obviously you see it on Instagram. And so I was like, what the fuck is this? Because you see like Tantra.
Right.
Oh, you know, and you're just like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's that? You know, but now you're like, as we were talking before, you were talking about Tantra, that it's much more than what you just see on Insta or advertised, that it's just this sexual thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear the word Tantra, they associate with immediately like sex or sexuality. Tantra, in my lineage, just means heart-to-heart transmission. So when you look at tantric teachings and the different practices that they have, it's just the use of, for me, movement, meditation, connection, and pleasure. So these are like the 4 pillars I use in order to create more healing and connection within your body or with your partner. So when we look at Tantra now, or you see like tantric workshops, or there's like a lot of like Netflix episodes on Tantra, it's a lot of neo-Tantra, which is basically like the Western appropriation of Tantra. So it's not... depending on, this is like a general comment, but most people that teach Tantra in the West now are just taking maybe a couple of things from this lineage, a couple of things from this teaching, a couple of things from this book, and then they put it together. But actual Tantra, it doesn't have to even involve like sex at the beginning. It's just the different pillars of meditation, movement, connection, and pleasure, all of this coming together, if that makes sense.
And when you talk about like pleasure, like what do you mean by pleasure?
So what I mean by pleasure is by learning to tap into your sexual energy. You guys were sharing before that you were working with elements and like the fire elements. So again, in my lineage, which is the Shangpa Kagyu lineage, is a specific lineage, we use sex as medicine, essentially. Sex is kind of like the vehicle you use for your healing. Pleasure just means, and pleasure doesn't have to be sexual pleasure. We have different forms of pleasure, right? So it's learning to tap into those little pleasures that occur in your body every day, because the pleasure state is basically the normal state in our nervous system that we should be at. But because we're all living in this like super fucked up society, all of us are in fight or flight, or all of us are just, in our heads, we're not really connected to our bodies. We're very dysregulated. So the pleasure state starts from a regulated nervous system. And then from there, we learn to get in touch with different forms of pleasure. And then if people are open to it, move into sexual pleasure. And that's kind of like the vehicle that we'll use. As I said before, the pleasure state is the only state that overrides in the body any pain or any numbness. So you can use pleasure as like a healing tool when you're working through some blocks somatically that are like stuck in your body.
So like, we were saying now about pleasure, that it's not just sexual pleasure, that in your day you can have other forms of pleasure.
Right.
Can you give me like examples of what that would be?
Yeah, like even the most simple example is, so I always work from a thing called like a pleasure scale. So, if I'm waking up and I'm going to have coffee, I don't know, like something super simple. It's taking a moment to be like, okay, I'm going to have this coffee. What can I do that would make this experience a little bit more pleasurable for me, right? Like we're always looking from external, outside, our friends, our families, to give us that form of experience, let's say. And maybe it's, maybe it's not sitting and drinking this in my kitchen, but I will take it with a blanket outside and like I'll watch the sunrise as I'm doing it. So it's just tapping into your five senses. So it can be like a sensual form of pleasure. Emotional pleasure, if you're having an amazing conversation with someone and you feel fully seen and heard and you've had this great exchange and you feel that form, like you feel, after a great conversation in your body, like, wow, this just felt so good and so right. Or so it's small things like this. I mean, even if you eating a meal and you connect to your five senses and you're taking a moment to become aware of what you're eating, that could even be a form of pleasure. So it's just becoming more aware, I think, of the moment and asking yourself, like, how can I meet my need for pleasure right now? Where am I on my pleasure scale? And what can I do to like improve that? So kind of just learning to tap more into pleasure, right? Rather than, like, we don't really ask ourselves where we're at normally when it comes to this. So,
like that's just something that for many people just goes out the window, right? As we're just so focused on doing, getting from one task to the next task to the next task, like slowing down and saying, how can I make this pleasurable, is quite radical.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, and I don't know if this would be considered pleasure, because again, I think my mind is like pleasure orgasm, right? And I'm thinking like in the morning, and recently I started like, I wake up at 6 a.m. and I need to go outside. Like I need to see the sun and I need to take off my shoes and put them on the ground. And I just feel like me, the earth, everything, we're just one. And I just feel, but I don't know if that's maybe pleasure, but I just feel good. And I just feel like the earth, me, we're all one. Like,
yeah, I think anytime you're tapping into your senses, connecting with your body and creating that space of bliss to arise, it sounds like you have a moment where you connect and you feel grounded and you feel maybe gratitude, and it's how you want to start your morning. That's you cultivating, tapping into even the awareness of pleasure in your body. I would say that's definitely a form of experiencing pleasure. Yeah. Maybe that's spiritual for you. Maybe that feels very spiritual when you do that. But yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That, I think it's like you were saying, how it's fully being present in the moment, and that pleasure can be many aspects. It's not just, because it's true, when you think of an orgasm, you are really in that moment and you're really there. You're nowhere else. And the minute you're somewhere else, it's gone, basically. And it's the same when you're in with the earth, or when the sun is hitting you and it just feels like you're allowing the sun to nourish you. It's just like, and I guess I just never associated that as pleasure.
Well, because we're always, like depending on what culture you are, how you were brought up, but we always think pleasure is something we need to earn, right? Like
Yeah.
I'll eat really well throughout the week so I can have this piece of cake, or like I'll do X, Y, and Z so I can treat myself to this. It's almost like we're conditioned to do X, Y, Z, and then we'll earn something, and then we earn pleasure, rather than kind of flipping that script and being like, pleasure is all of our birthrights. It could be a state of being, and how do we cultivate it? It doesn't have to be these major peaks of orgasm, and it can be, but it's also like, how do we move our awareness, our consciousness, and shift to the pleasures that we have every day in the moment? And how can you tap into the body and like feel into those like subtler pleasures that are occurring? Yeah.
It's so true, that earn it. I'll be happy when, you know, we get those frames around so many things. You know, I'll be happy when we see that in mental health all the time. I'll be happy when I don't have anxiety. I'll be happy when I don't feel sad. But yeah, earning that pleasure.
Yeah.
It's very
And we always
ingrained.
say, like, in different forms, I always hear like, energy flows where attention goes, you know, like this kind of saying. And you know, sometimes we're, I think, super hyper focused on the things we don't have, like you said, or the things that are wrong, or, you know, it's that kind of mentality. So shifting that back and focusing on that. Like I teach my clients this thing called a pleasure journal. It's quite simple, but you wake up, or you can do it at the end of the day. Like 3 things you appreciate about yourself, 3 things you appreciate about your life, and 3 ways in which you met your own need for that day. And people are always like, ugh, like, do I have to do this? What is this? And then people start off very superficial. Oh, I had coffee and I found this super pleasurable. Or like, oh, I'm so grateful for my husband, my children. But then the more you do it, the more I think that understanding of pleasure deepens and kind of expands. And you can really tap into like, you know, I had this conversation, the way I handled it, and then the emotion that came up. And you can really get deep to a point where I think you can find beauty and pleasure in everything that you do. Like you kind of move away from this black and white thinking and right or wrong, and you kind of start to unite a lot of things. So it's a very interesting exercise, and also brings it back to yourself of owning your own pleasure. Like, how am I meeting my own need? What do I need? Rather than expecting people to give you this, you know?
You know, as you're talking, I'm feeling, I feel there's a link between pleasure and being able to receive. Like when I was saying about I'm in the sun, I allow the sun to nourish me. I allow the sun to give me, you know, this conversation. I'm having this lovely conversation here actually, and I'm feeling so good just being in this space. I'm allowing myself to receive from you, and to receive this information and be like, whoa, you know, I don't know, I feel there's something around that too, like with pleasure and receiving, allowing to receive.
Yeah, I mean, I think
know.
maybe you can also talk about this, but like the pleasure state to me, it's kind of like a state of being, and like in kind of that like love, right? Like, again, Tantra is a heart-to-heart transmission. So we don't do Tantra, we like live Tantra, you know, it's not something we do. It's essentially, it becomes a way of living. The same as this like pleasure state. It's kind of like this frequency of love almost. And I feel like, I don't know, a lot of people that I work with, like including myself, of how I used to relate to how do I like being loved, and like, how do I give love? It's very conditioned from a childhood perspective. I feel like we all feel like we need to do certain things to receive love, or this is what love looks like. So I think growing up, because we don't have healthy ways of relating, healthy ways of understanding love, a lot of us are closed off and our hearts are closed off. So yeah, I think definitely there's a link between being able to fully receive, and before receiving, being able to fully even tap into what you're receiving, like in your body, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's like being able to also be connected to the body. Like, what's my body telling me? What does my body need right now? And allowing myself to honor what it needs right now. That's what you mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's so when I'm then in my work, like if we shift to like, how does this translate to a person when they come to me? So, you know, some people can identify the sexual dysfunctions they have. Okay, so for women, it could be pain. For men, it could be like performance anxiety, ejaculation, like all these early ejaculation. It could be all these things. So yes, there's problems. And then there's people that just come because they're like curious, and they don't even know that they have blocks around their pleasure. They don't know that there was shame or there was guilt. So once you are open to, let's say, doing the practices to connect with your body in a somatic way, and then you can move into connecting with your body sexually, a lot of people will feel like, oh shit, like I didn't even know this was something I needed to work on. And but then on the other side of that, if they actually persevere and work through, you're basically connecting back with your like life force and energy. So I think that's why sex is such a big topic, because we're all interested in it, because obviously we're all inherently sexual beings, but it's a place where all of us hold a lot of emotion. It could be shame, it could be guilt, it could be curiosity. We all have desires, fantasies, and it's a place where I think we want to talk about it, but there's definitely still a big taboo around it, even though we're living in such a hypersexualized world right now. When you look at the studies, like the millennial generation, I will say, is having the least amount of sex compared to our parents and our grandparents. And then those who are having sex are having, they're reporting unsatisfied sex. So it's an interesting dichotomy, because it's a super hypersexualized world, and everyone's talking about it, but no one is really dropping into the body and experiencing the healing aspect of it, let's say.
That's so true. I noticed like we're so obsessed as a modern culture with what I call top-down interventions, like my mind, if I can just read about it and know something different, I can change how I'm feeling, how I'm functioning, what I'm doing. But these bottom-up processes, which have been around for thousands of years, I've always felt are the most powerful. Like if someone has an experience, like therapy, talk therapy even, because there's talk, and it has to be good talk, but what's really actually happening in the room is an experience, and that's happening in the senses. And it's that shifts the person. So you're specifically utilizing the senses to give a bottom-up somatic experience that helps the person realize things about themselves, rather than let me tell you about this stuff called pleasure, and then you're going to like apply that thinking to your body. Yeah.
And there's, I think, definitely, like you said, like a crisis of self-help right now. Like if I read enough books, if I attend enough workshops, but I agree, I think at one point you just need to allow the body to shift and like receive whatever conversation you're having or whatever practice you're doing. And then that's when I think you start to unlock some true like shift in your DNA and in your, like cellular memory.
Yeah, because you also do workshops, right? And retreats.
Right.
And in a lot of those retreats, it's more experiential rather than
everything.
the like content, like rather than theory, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's more of like, let me take you on that journey, whether through, what do you do like to help them get on that journey?
So, because I'm combining like this Tibetan Buddhism Tantra lineage that I use. So we do a lot of meditating, and the type of meditation we do is, it's called light body yoga. So we actually meditate with our eyes open. So a lot of the times if you attend meditation classes, it's, eyes closed, very chill music. There's a perfect temperature, and it almost feels like you need to have this perfect condition to go into a meditative state. In our lineage, our Lama says like inside, outside, same. So there is no separation. There's no difference between your inside and outside. So what you're doing is by training your nervous system and your energy body, let's say, to meditate with your eyes open, you're kind of able to tap into this meditative state that you experience throughout your day. There's no separation. So when we meditate, there's also visualization and mantra. So this is how we keep the mind from, let's say, all the thoughts coming. So because if you have your eyes open and you're saying something and you're visualizing something with color, it's very hard to think about something else. So I've attended many meditations myself, but none of them has worked for me until I found this specific way of meditating where I was like, oh, this works for me. And it's not for everyone, but so we meditate, and it's a lot of meditation. There's a lot of movement. So I teach a lot of like erotic dance as well. It's a lot of different pelvic floor exercises. For women, it's using the jade egg, which is a little stone that you can use for your pelvic floor. Nothing super complicated. It's just learning to work with the pelvic floor in a dynamic way. a lot of women that come to us, it's like they've done Kegels, right? Like squeeze. And this is kind of what we were told growing up, like Kegels are amazing and they're going to give you amazing orgasms. But essentially, if you're just squeezing all the time, you're using the muscle in one way, and the pelvic floor needs to be dynamic. So it can create a lot of like hypertension, which causes tightness, which causes pain for women. So it's learning how to control your pelvic floor, a lot of breath exercises, and movement also helps open. Connection, depending on, even if you don't have a partner, we'll do a lot of like nervous system regulation together. So this is the stuff that you normally see with eyes, with breath, with, again, mantra. So there's a lot of like connecting with the group, or if you're with your partner. And then pleasure is for people who are open to sexual practices. There's a lot of like touch and healing, massage, let's say, associated with it. When we look at trauma, there's a lot of trauma that's, stored in your tissues. So as much as we do a lot of like talk therapy, I found that it's also, you have to kind of do both. You need to have good talk and also somatic releases from the body. We say like your issues are stored in your tissues.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. So I've been in a lot of sessions where, women who've given birth, or they've had C-sections, or, a lot of sexual assault. Anyway, there's just a lot of emotion held around the pelvic floor and the genitals for women. And when you can work through using your own breath and, support, let's say, you can really actually break through and, bring sensation back to and restore pleasure or function in the tissue. It's kind of like if you go to an acupuncture session and, they stick a needle and you can kind of feel it shake, and then there's sometimes like this release that happens. It's similar to that, like the experience is similar to that of, so we use touch as well. So it's a lot, but...
Because, you mentioned earlier about life force. Can you talk a bit more about that? Like, what do you mean by life force?
So again, this is like in our lineage, let's say, your sexual energy is your life force energy, right? So this is kind of the energy that resides within all of us. And the more we learn to work with this energy and cultivate this energy and deepen this energy, the more a lot of things will unlock. Like when you guys were saying you were working with the fire element, which is associated with creativity, right? So it's just learning to, I guess, work with that energy that's in your body, let's say. Yeah.
So like prana, same sort of idea
similar,
as prana or chi?
Yes, the chi, life force.
Yeah.
Yeah, reason because I'm thinking it goes back to why is it important? Like, why is it important for someone, to get in touch with that part of that life force? That's what I was thinking.
It's the bit we're not taught about, right?
Yeah.
So we're so materialistic and rational that we're taught that stuff doesn't even exist. And so we turn to these Eastern or older systems, and then the bypassing happens, where they get kind of understood in a very superficial way, applied in a very general way, and then they kind of, it's a shame because I've seen people like miss the point that, because we're so goal oriented as a modern culture, and you must see this all the time, but to become truly process oriented, like I love that what you said about the meditation, like all day long as a meditation, everything you train yourself to be in that's really kind of interesting. Like, and that life force, when you learn to feel that essential force within you, as we do in yoga schools, and hatha yoga is just a branch of Tantra. It comes from Tantra. That it's hard to put words around it, but then a person really starts to inhabit their body, and that's very different from the way we're taught to be in our bodies, which is our body is a thing that carries our brain around. Which is, anyway. I went on a bit of a rave there.
No.
I don't know. I woke up all of a sudden.
That's I think what you said, like 100%. And pleasure is everyone's birthright, and we are all sexual beings inherently, right? Like, and that doesn't mean you can be a sexual being without having sex. I think sexual energy is just you being fully tapped into your body, right? And being, instead of just being in your head. We're so head heavy. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's so easy to bypass in this realm, because I did this. Even if you, for example, couldn't have an orgasm, you healed yourself, you have an orgasm, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, we're healed, it's great. Like, I think the more you go into this work, you realize, oh, there's more layers of the onion, and there's more blocks, and like, because you're just trying to find your own essence as a human, like who am I truly when I am free, you know? And I think there's a big block when it comes to sex and freedom, because of the world we're living in, essentially. Yeah,
I'm laughing because, you know, I did this really cool dark feminine activation course, whatever, and I love the instructor who teaches it. I do a lot of her courses, and she takes you a lot. She explains, you know, she takes you through the theory, or like, you know, we have conversations and all that, and then every session she takes you on a journey. And like, you know, eyes closed, you know, takes you on a journey, and I fucking hate going on that journey. You know, but I like the discussion, that, you know, because it's like I want to avoid it at all costs. But I know how I'll feel after it. I'll feel fucking awesome after. But it's so hard. Like, you know, like you have to, like, you know, and I think, khalas, I invested in this course, I have to do it. It doesn't just come like, I want to go and, like, you know.
Is it just your mind? Like, is your mind just
because
sort
my
of
mind
addicted to the knowledge part of it?
Yes, and look, and I think one part of me loves knowledge. One part of me, I cannot deny that. But I think also on another side, I think the knowledge and seeking knowledge is also a sort of Band-Aid.
100%.
You know, I cannot lie to myself either, you know, because it's funny, only this past few months, I decided I'm not going to take any more courses for a while. Like, I'm just not. I'm just going to allow integration to happen. And that is making me very uncomfortable. I won't lie. And because I think it's like discomfort's here. I need something to fix it. I need to go do this course. I need this. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but I feel there's something around sitting with it, being with it. I know enough right now for what's happening right now, and allow it to integrate. And I think on some level, I'm doing a bit of that spiritual bypassing sometimes with the knowledge. And I think what happens is I'm seeking knowledge. I also have to allow it to be absorbed. And part of her exercises is allowing that to absorb. And it's like, no, I just want to stay here. And I think growing up for me, a lot of it is there's safety in the knowledge. It's not necessarily very safe to go in the body.
So how do you feel about doing Tugce's workshop then on Monday?
You know, very good. Like because I know it's not content based.
Yeah, but like, is there any pushback from your mind? Like, are you going to, like, because it's going to be experiential, right?
Yeah.
And exploring the stuff, like, is there part of you which...
No, but I think it's because I'm kind of confronting that part of me. So I see it. So yeah, no. And because 2 weeks ago we had a conscious movement workshop, and it was fucking amazing. But like I was telling you, you ask me what I did, and ask probably everyone else what they did, will tell you, I don't know. I actually don't know, but we did something. And I know that I felt like $1 million. Like, I really, like, I saw and I don't know, we just moved. Like, I don't even know what we did. Like, and I would, but what I do know is when I sat down and she just asked us to answer a few questions, what I wrote, I was like, whoa, who is this? Like, what? But I didn't do anything. And it made me start thinking, actually, and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I don't know, there's something in that. And that's why I keep asking you, like, what is life force? What is this? Because I feel sometimes these things can be not vague, but right? Like, it's like, what does it mean? Like, what do you mean? But it's because it's an experience.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't feel good. Like,
Oh,
you
100%.
know, if any clients are listening, like there's many months where it's really shit. I mean, it's for me, it's my own journey. It's been more lows than highs. I mean, the highs are good, but sometimes like I can teach the same, I don't know, breath work or meditation to two people, and one will have an incredible experience and the other one, so much shit will be coming up, and, you know, and then you have to be there, and then you have to let it arise and transmute and purify it and let it go instead of pushing it down, or with knowledge as well. So I always tell people too, like, don't come with an attachment to anything, because the moment we attach, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to feel like this, is the moment you're already conditioning your body to be a certain way. I've done so many workshops where I'm left crying rather than like this high, right? So that's also an interesting component. Like for me, when I first started this work, I was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to feel good. I'm amazing. And yeah, it's mostly been in our workshops too, that we will do, for example, on our workshop, something called the ocean breath. It's a very simple breath, but I feel like there's so much complexity in it. It's using your voicing as well as your breath. And you do it for a while. Everyone hates this. Everybody hates this because there's a lot of voicing, especially for women who, you know, have a lot of blocks around speaking, asking. A lot of blocks come up, and everyone's just they hate it. The thing that people hate the most is probably the thing that they need the most, right? Like when I avoid something, I'm like, I probably need this rather than this. So you will experience it. So maybe you'll do a follow-up at the end of the episode to be like, this was shit. But the moment I think we attach healing to it, because it's also, when you were saying, I want the knowledge. In our lineage as well, we say like the body is Buddha. All the knowledge you have is within your body, right? Like the body wants to heal, the body wants to regulate, the body wants to be in a nervous system that feels calm or like pleasurable. And yes, you need to have a dynamic nervous system as well. But it's when you can, I think, let it integrate and let some wisdom and clarity come right from within. So yeah, it'll be an interesting experience, I think. But yeah, sometimes my own journey has been like not fun or amazing at all. It's been shit where I'm in bed for like 2 weeks and I'm like, what the fuck is going on, you know? Yeah. But then when you come out of it, you're like, this is great. And then like, you're like, oh, another layer of shit that comes up. And I think that's like the beauty of life. Like we're just peeling all the shit. And then you realize there's no end goal to healing, because it's just you getting to your own essence in one way or another. You're just understanding yourself, learning to drop into your body. And it's not like you're in your body or not in your body. I think you can always be more deeply in your body, more and more and more and more. So fun ride. It's a fun ride.
Why do you think you went into this particular branch of psychology as opposed to other ones? Like what drew you here? Because this is not an easy place to work, right? So all therapy, you're going to work with resistance. Mm-hmm. But this one, in the world we live in, and like you said before, the trauma and the shame, and that, like, this is going to be a particularly challenging place to work. So why are you here?
Such a good question. I have my own therapist, and she asked me this question recently, and I had to answer, and she was like, no, that's not it. Mm-hmm. I grew up seeing a lot of taboo relationships. Let's say that when I was a child, I've been around a lot of taboo relationships, a lot of different age gap relationships, a lot of things we would consider in the Middle East not normal, you know, from my mom to just families around me. So now I'm realizing from my sessions that it might be because it was so taboo and hush-hush that it's like, oh, I want to like, you know, not just talk about this. I'm going to talk about this, you know, I'm going to like claim this side of it. But then also, I think I've always just been super interested in sex. Like as a young child, I know I was super, you know, interested in my genitals. I know I started masturbating really young. At, you know, school, people were looking at porn. I was like so confused, like what was happening. And even though my family is quite open and I went to an international school, so it wasn't like as hard conditioning, I still grew up in Turkey, and my mom's side is still quite religious. So there was definitely like, oh, don't talk about this, and this is shameful. And I think I don't know, maybe it was like some resistance that I had. And then I was actually not looking to get into sexology. I was just looking for healing myself. And when I found this branch of Taoist teachings that optionally gave you the practices, I realized, oh, this is super deep, and I love this. And then I got really like into it, and then I was like, I want to teach this. So I think it was more so I got into it for selfish reasons of wanting to like talk about it and heal myself in a way, my own relational patterns, how I relate. I really wanted to understand myself. I think it's fascinating. Like relationships, I think, are the most fascinating things we can talk about in intimacy. And I think sex was just that part that grabbed me. And I was like, great, then I'm going to do this. So yeah, it's.
So how did tapping into that power, that, let's say, what do you call it, the life force, how did that change your life? Or what did that get you in contact with?
So much. My life has changed a lot. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So, yeah. So
But man, she comes up often, like as in that part of me.
Yeah. So I think it's... okay, like I guess overall, like I was very much in a victim mentality, right? Like I think I grew up like trying to understand the world, but from like a very much victim mentality based thing. Oh, this is all happening to me because of this. Like it was a very much like external, not any accountability on how I lived my life. So I think once I started this work, it's mostly learning to take accountability for everything, not just the good, but also the bad. And I think taking accountability just shifts your life anyway. And then now the fact that I can do this and I can teach and I can really connect with people, I'm really living a life that I'm like proud of and want to grow into. My boundaries I'm still working on, but it's definitely become much more clearer. My relationships have gone better, but also deeper. Like there's a level of, I think, like your old self dying. But yeah, I think it's just learning. I've learned how to connect with people from a place of, I think, heart rather than like fear or this is how I should act or this is how I should be or this is how are you feeling right now? I need to, make sure you're okay. There's a lot of that. So definitely like my anxiety has lowered. My mental health has gone way better. Yeah.
So like, wow. So it's kind of like tapping into your own pleasure and your own, let's say, I think it's your power, right? Like
right.
you've kind of reclaimed your power.
Yeah, and I think
process.
I'm learning every day on how to do so. And sexually, it's been like amazing to explore my body and the potential of my body. Because I always thought, oh, this is how I feel. Okay, this is an orgasm. It's clitoral. It's nice. And okay, this not. And then I didn't know all the shit that was here and the potential of even just giving my own self pleasure. Like we always say, you should be your best lover, right? Like the way you masturbate, the way you touch yourself is probably going to be the way you have sex with someone. So if you are just expecting your partner to read your mind and do everything, it's not going to be maybe the best experience. Whereas if you know your body, how it works, what you need, what you can communicate, it's just going to be a better co-created experience,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like I can't expect my partner to know me if I don't know me.
Correct.
And there's a certain level of power, right? Like when you know what hits right and what doesn't. But that in and of itself is a journey.
Yes.
I feel.
Yeah. When we do like, there's something called like the orgasmic awareness practice that we start off with my clients when they're ready to go into more like sexual type of work. It's just different ways of touching and using your breath, touch, and awareness, let's say, to wake up your body and to connect with your body a little bit. And it seems so simple when people do it. They're like, wow, I didn't know there was pain in this section. I didn't know that I couldn't feel here. We don't really take time to even, like many women don't know their genitals. They're not familiar with it, right? So it can be very revolutionary for someone to just take time to prioritize this for themselves, even if it's for 10 minutes for you to like an exercise that I like to get my clients to do is like take a handheld mirror and just like look at your genitals. Like try to really identify, explore different parts, like touch your mons pubis, which is like right above, like that fatty part above your vulva, like touch the clitoris, touch the labia, touch the entrance of the vagina. Just take time though at each part rather than like this whole, and see how it feels. Like, how do you feel looking at it? How do you feel identifying? What are the words that are coming up? Is it a lot of shame that's coming up? Maybe there's stories that are coming up. And then we use a lot of tantric speech, or it's just positive affirmations to basically recorrect how you talk to yourself, how you talk to your body, how you talk to your genitals. Because a lot of people hold a lot of shame. Does it look weird? The color is weird. It might smell weird, right? And even that blocks you from connecting with your partner, because you're like, almost like closing your body and like, I don't want him to go there. And a lot of women are like, I don't want my partner to go down there. You know, it's not because of preference of I don't like the sensation. Maybe it is, but it's a small portion. It's more like, what if it looks weird? It tastes weird. It smells weird. It's like all these things that come up. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm thinking, because like, you know, when you look at all these, like you were saying, ancient tradition, Buddhist and Taoist, you know, they talk about the pleasure center, right? Like, the, you know, Tantra basically. But then if you look at, I don't know, with religion or Abrahamic religions, whatever, that part has been shamed, right? Like, whereas in ancient tradition, it was like, how do we cultivate that energy? So I'm curious, because it's like, what did we get out of shaming it? If the power is in the pussy, but like, as I know, if the power is there, why shame it? And then how to reclaim it?
Well, what sort of system are we living inside of for 4,000 years?
Yeah, but that makes you start think, because it's like, oof, like I'm letting it digest, you know.
Well, if women are disconnected from their power center, they're easier to control.
Yeah.
So this, like, that's where it comes from, you know. And it's quite, look at all the derogatory language and attitudes that are thrown at women who are more in touch with that, right? Called sluts, called this, called that, called, you know, like, there's more. It's more than just sort of Puritanism. It's
100%.
power. It's fear. You know, women who hold that sort of, it's a sense of freedom and creativity. You know, and there's a wild creativity to feminine energy, but it's been repackaged as nice.
Yeah.
It's not very nice. I don't think it's nice.
Yeah, and that's why
it's more wild than nice.
Yeah. I think
men are more nice, actually.
I agree. I agree with you.
and that's why I kept asking.
Yeah.
I'm like, what did you get out of it, or why is it important? Because there's something we went into. Creativity comes out of it. What you realize was you got stronger, or I don't want to, like you got more aware of like, oh, actually no, I don't want to do this. Actually, yes, I want to do. Like you got better with your bound. Like you became your
own healer in a way. And I think that's what everyone has this. I think when we were talking about people going to workshops and all of this, like there's a lot of like God complex in the industry of like, I am your teacher, I am the guru, I am the healer, rather than being like the conduit for someone's healing and giving them the tools and they figure out essentially, and you're just there to like guide them. Also this type of work, when you look at like the meditations, and again the lineage that's based, it's we believe in like the collective healing. So every time I sit and meditate, again, there's different forms of Tantra. Some are for like me, I'm healing. This is very much like I'm sitting down and meditating for the benefit of all beings. So when I'm visualizing like colors and chants, like I'm literally visualizing people within like you start with the visualization, basically goes with where you're meditating, and then you kind of start expanding and you visualize the earth, you visualize the cosmos. So it's very much of the understanding is like none of us are free from suffering until we're all free from the suffering. So every time you're meditating, you have that, you're also meditating from that lens of like the benefit of everyone. So when you're sitting down to meditate every day for the benefit of everyone, it's hard to see separation, for example, between you and I. And there's a lot of separation within the world right now.
Yeah.
You are different from me. What I do doesn't impact you. And that's like probably the biggest cause of suffering right now. So in the system that I teach, there's 5 root poisons, and each element, so I teach the 5 elements, is a cure for a root poison. So there's anger, jealousy, separation, like all these things. And so it's an interesting system, but it's one that has made sense to me, right? So I find a lot of comfort in that. And I do feel like people around me that I live with, that I connect with, also benefit from that. And the quality of my energy exchange, I feel like, has gotten better, and I'm more open to learning from, I don't know, there's just like a level of openness that I feel from my heart when I'm conversing with people. Yeah.
It's kind of like going back to the essence of who you are, right? You know, so I'm thinking, like, if someone were to have, you know, issues with sex, whether with their partner, with themselves, getting in touch with pleasure, I don't know if people know where to go. You know, really, like, I actually, you know, do you work with people online?
I work with people online. I work with people in person, and I'm very aware of like my own boundaries. You know, I think we also like mental health and healing. There's so many different expertise, let's say. So I like to usually do collaborative work. So I will work with pelvic floor specialists. I will work with psychologists, because everybody can add from their own special angle. So yes, I work with people online. When I do in-person work, I'm not hands-on with people, but there's also sexological body work. These are people that will work with you hands-on. It just depends on what type of, let's say, healing you need, what type of dysfunction you're trying to fix, or what kind of blocks that you have. But you can always start with a sexologist, and then from there you can get deferred depending on like the problem that you have.
Because, you know, there's a lot of shame with this. Like, I'm sure a lot of people have their own struggles, but like, is you know, having issues around pleasure sexually, is that a common thing?
I think it's one of the biggest blocks we all have.
And what I see a lot of is people will go to their doctor, and it's not that doctors aren't, you know, often great, but for this particular thing, what I've observed is that is not...
They're not trained.
No. And it doesn't usually go that well.
Yeah.
Like, to look at it mechanistically or reductively.
Yeah.
And so, and often people, like, I have experienced this, and they've gone on that journey, they've been told there's nothing wrong with you. And that can be very damaging, because then it really drives it deep that there's something wrong with me, you know? Like, and so a lot of people feel pretty helpless about this, and they don't realize, but then they'd be afraid. When you get people that are working with you, how do you work with their fear? Like, how do you get in there and let them trust you and get them to trust you? Because it's hard in normal therapy, let alone in this type of therapy. So what do you do?
We start very non-sexual. Like, I always try to first make people understand that this is whatever they're experiencing. I've talked to hundreds of people at this point. It's common. Like, what you're experiencing is common and it's normal. 2, that you can heal it. And then we start very much with hands-off work, and it's a lot of like nervous system regulation, because you can't do any sort of somatic work from a dysregulated state. So I kind of ease them in. So we start with like a little bit of breath work, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of awareness, and that already feels good for people. So they've kind of can drop in a little bit. So their guards are a little bit lower. They feel like they're a little bit more in their body. And once and this is again, I have some clients who I will give like the meditation soon. They won't do it until like the next time they see me. And then I'm like, this is really your work. Like, I can't force you. Like, the more you do this medicine, the better it's going to be. And, depending on the fears that come up, I also do offer talk therapy, but I do less explaining and more like, do this and then we'll talk about how you feel. Because once somebody experiences something, they're like, what the fuck just happened? I want to understand what happened. So I work a little bit more backwards. I'm like, I'm not going to explain to you what's happening to your body. Let's do it, and then let's see how you feel. And when they've actually experienced and they can drop in or they've had some sort of memory come up or something, then we can talk about it and it feels more productive because they're already in their body and we're having the conversation from that point rather than like me sitting and explaining this theory and then like us doing something, you know?
Yeah, it's brilliant. So we know, like, what I'm curious is, what I think is great is that people like you are out there, so that people, because I think people don't like to share maybe this kind of stuff with their friends or with, you know, because I think there's a lot of shame, right? You're like weird or you're this, and I think there's a certain level of, again, it's very performance based. So it's nice to know that there are people like that, you know, they can reach out to. But I think sometimes what happens is people are like, oh, why should I deal with that shit? I'm doing okay. So I want people to know, like, what is on the flip side of that? Like, when you, like, this is a very lame example, but not related. Well, related, but not related. So in the workshop two weeks ago, like an hour before the end of the workshop, she was like, oh, I'm going to make you guys do this thing. I'm like, no, I'm already in my pleasure right now. I'm feeling good. I don't need to do any other shit. Like, I'm good. She's like, no, just try this. Then I'm like, like, I'm already good. Like, why do I need to? And I did it, and I ended up here. Do you know what I mean? But I had to go against, because I always tell Briar, I'm like, I'm a pleasure slut. Like, you give me grapes, I don't want to deal with shit. So I just want, take care of me, fan me, feed me grapes, like, and I'm good. But another part of me wants to understand, wants to go on that journey, but I have to keep reminding that part that it's safe. And like, for me, seeing that, oh wow, at the flip side, it was actually even better than this. But I had to trust her to go there.
So you want to know kind of what's on offer.
Yeah, like
if someone works through their fears, works through their blocks, works through their trust issues, goes on this journey, what's waiting for them?
More bliss, more joy, more love, more connection. But this work is kind of like therapy, you know. You can't really force someone to go into therapy. It's the same thing, you know. I stopped being more of a savior and more of a person that when people are ready, they will go through this journey. It's the same as when people are ready for therapy. Like, you can see someone, you can really see, and there were so many people around me like, oh, they really need this, and I want to teach you this, I want to do this. But, you know, like my mom, for example, there were some things where I was trying to teach her for like breath work and all this stuff. And for 2 years we were living together, and she's like so against it. And then the other day she's like, oh, why don't you teach me some of the stuff that you do? And we did it. She's like, that was amazing. You teach this stuff. And, you know, sometimes you got to let people also, you got to give people time, but to know that there's always more joy you can tap into, more bliss, more connection with yourself and with your relationships. Your quality of life just improves, and I think it softens a little bit. Yeah.
But that's why I thought it was so important to have this discussion, because I think people, when they think, okay, well, why? Where am I going to go? Who am I going to speak to? Like, who's going to help me with this? Khalas, I'm okay. Not great, but I'm okay. But I think when you understand, like, what does this practice look like? What's waiting for you? What can you experience? And again, with the right person you're working with, like, you know, this thing is out there. These kind of people who are doing this kind of work are out there. And it's kind of like, with that, you start reclaiming parts of you.
100%.
You know, you go into your power, you tap into that creativity. You move. I think, what's her name? Mama Gina. What's her name? Gina. I forgot her name. The School of Womanly Arts. She's like, she's like, you move in your life from a place of turn on. Like, you know, like what you're saying. You're in that. You live your life from that state of pleasure. So it's.
Yeah.
You make decisions from that place. You move within that place. Of course, that's like, you know, goals, but. You know, just imagine what you attract towards you as well with that vibration, you know?
Yeah. And it's a lot of non-attachment. Yeah. I think when you do this work, you realize you're attached to so many things, so that so many things can happen, and you kind of learn to let go a little bit more and be more present. And I think sounds so simple, but it's probably like the most, I don't know. It's the most that I can ask
again,
for.
You're working with fear. Like, fear is fuck, man. Like, it's scary.
Well, that's what blocks creativity. So this is another way of looking at it. It's like this is re-embracing the creative self. Like when you think about creative acts, it doesn't get more creative than procreation, right? So the closest thing we have to magic is there was no human. Now this a whole human. Where did the human come from? And it came through. And that's intimately connected to this, right?
Yeah.
So not that everyone has children or everyone's a female, but it's that creative being that we are that we lose touch with because we get told we're only creative if we do certain jobs, which is like so ridiculous.
And I love this also because, there's many modalities, like there's therapy, there's different kinds of healing modalities. And I actually really like this as a healing modality because it's not just about sex, it's about all of you and the different parts of you and integrating these parts of you as one. And like, it's actually some deep shit. Like, you know what I mean? Which I like actually. Because you're not only dealing with, say, your issue with pleasure, but you're also dealing with so many other blocks that are stopping you from reclaiming what was your birthright.
The pleasure is just the vehicle we use for the healing.
Yeah.
So the benefits are of like that of feeling maybe a couple of orgasms. That's great. But like the pleasure is just one of the quickest ways to your healing, to let go of the blocks, which is why for me, when I teach this modality, I feel like it really I always say like this shit really works because I always hear it, Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that you work with anxiety, that pervasive tension that people will hold themselves in when they're anxious, right? And doing something like just relaxing, and you'll say relax, and they'll do that conceptually. And I go, no, see, your shoulders are there. Let them go there. Like actually let the muscle go. It's not an idea. It's a movement, right? And then talking to them about how that's the way you talk to your body. That's the way your body talks to your nervous system, and your nervous system talks to your emotional system. Like this can't talk to it.
Yep.
It can't speak that language. You've got to do it with movement, with breath, with those. And I think when people tap into that, it's like a whole world they've got for working with themselves.
Yeah.
Like never since the dawn of time have we calmed down through telling ourselves to calm down, or don't be anxious. All you're doing is focusing on anxiety, but when you learn to work with your muscles and work with your cells and work with this changes the whole thing, So cool. And just this focus being on the sexuality has such a healing component because it's so heavy, like what's been put on top of that in our world. So it must be very satisfying to watch people break through and reclaim
It's incredible. And it's healing to me every time I see
I'll bet.
that happen for me. Yeah.
So cool.
So thank you so much for having us. Sorry.
Thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you for letting us have
I'm so in the conversation. Like I'm still I'm still in it.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
We really enjoyed this.
We look forward to your workshop on Monday.
Yeah,
I'm excited to have you guys.
If you're listening to this in the future, the workshop already happened. It was awesome.
Yeah. But you do many workshops in different parts of the world, right?
Yeah, we will put everything in the show notes so that you can find Tugce.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
Yeah.